Well, the SNP have called this afternoon for an extension to the furlough scheme. It is, of course, the easiest thing in the world for the SNP government to call for something to be done by somebody else. And call for something to be done they don't have to pay for, that somebody else will have to pay for. Now, it wouldn't be a debate in this chamber without the usual tiresome mentions from SNP members of independence. And we even had it from the Minister. If only we were independent, we could extend the furlough scheme forever, indefinitely. No word as to how it would be paid for, because, of course, there wouldn't be enough in the way of unicorns and fairy dust in an independent Scotland to pay for the furlough scheme we've had, never mind any extension to do it. They simply couldn't afford it, Presiding Officer. But I accept the point that's been made by a number of members. I accept there are issues for business as we get towards the end of October. So we do need to look at what can be done to try and fill the gap. There is an argument for looking at an extension to the furlough scheme. There might be an argument for looking at an extension in, say, particular sectors of the economy, which have been hardest hit. But it's not a conclusive argument. And that's why we're not supporting the government motion today, because we are not persuaded that is the only answer at this particular point. And the reason I say that is because the economy is changing. We have to recognise this. There are some jobs that existed before COVID that may not have a long-term future because of economic changes. To take one example, we do know, as a result of COVID, that more people will work from home rather than commuting to a place of work. That will have an impact on the supply of office space, on the servicing of office space. It will have an impact on transport services, on the number of people using public transport. We heard in the debate yesterday about aviation. I suspect it will be a long time before people are flying in the numbers they were flying last year. And a furlough scheme extension of another 8 months isn't going to be a lot of help in the long term to people in that sector. And Rachel Hamilton made a really important point, because what we need to be doing is supporting the people who are in jobs that may not have a long-term future because of economic change, and using resources in terms of retraining and support, rather than extending the furlough scheme necessarily for those people for a longer-term period. And that's the sort of solution we should be looking at. So something should replace the furlough scheme. That's what we would say.
I spoke earlier to Douglas Ross and began by asking him, would he like to see the furlough scheme extended?
Well, we've already seen the furlough scheme, and the range of measures put in by the UK government have protected over 900,000 jobs in Scotland. It's been a massive scheme that has really done as intended, and I don't think anyone expected the furlough scheme to last indefinitely. So while there has been a tapering off...
Well, if not indefinitely, but you would like it to be extended, wouldn't you?
I think at the end of October, and there is obviously the scheme that allows employees coming back, the employer then to get £1,000 if they remain employed until next year. But I do think there are some sectors that are still struggling, and that are clearly still struggling. And I think we have seen from this Chancellor and this UK government to take notice of everything going on in the country. And I would expect, and we'll certainly be speaking with the Chancellor to see what can be done to protect those industries.
And your recommendation will be extend it, at least for some industries?
Well, I think it's looking at a range of measures that the UK government can use to support businesses, individuals and employees. As we've seen, the furlough started in a very different form to how it will end in October. There are obviously additional measures from October.
But whatever those measures are, you would want it to replicate the furlough?
I would want it to ensure that industries and sectors that continue to struggle as a result of COVID-19 get the support that they require.
But you would want it to replicate the furlough, because that's the language. I mean, in your policy document on jobs you produced, key recommendation number 2 was a government fund directed towards firms facing localised lockdowns, replicating the cash support they receive from furlough.
Yes, but that's different from saying it must be the furlough as we have it at the moment. There are a number of different measures we can use. So, for example, Gordon, if I can, areas such as Aberdeen